All right, here we are. We're live in studio at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I'm David Paul Blumenshine. This is the DPB show. Not quite yet, I shouldn't say. We're not live on the radio yet. I'm kind of still doing some of the house cleaning here behind the scenes and getting ready to go live, but wanted to give you a brief synopsis of what we will be covering today. I just had somebody text in, so I've got to quickly go back to it. Let's see here. Oh, we've got John Finch, my friend, author of The Father Effect. I've been following John for a while. He's got a full-length movie out. And bottom line is, I think you're going to be better for it by watching John. There is a epidemic that's going on right now in our country, and it is the fatherless home. But we're also going to have Jim Rule. And he's going to be here talking about the Republican Party and where we go from here in Illinois. So we're about ready to go live here in a few seconds. So thanks for joining us. If I stand up. Yes, it is. It is the DPB show. I'm David Paul Blumenshine. Once again, we've arrived at Sunday. A little chilly out there today, and hopefully you're able to get beyond this brief, I should say, backlash of winter weather, and we will spring again back into spring here this week. Once again, always appreciate you joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal, where we provide the most live and local talk on the weekends. And so I hope that you're enjoying the programming so far. Our programming has advanced a little bit. Now you can catch us live streaming on YouTube, on Rumble, on Facebook, not Rumble.
I don't think we're on Rumble yet.
Not Rumble.
Nope, I'm working on it. Something I'm working on, but we're not quite on
Rumble.
there yet.
You can hear him across the way. What was the other one? There's a third one. Oh, Twitter.
We're on. Right now we're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. All of them. Our usernames are some variation of Cities 929. You can go check us out there once you get out of your car. Make sure you're not watching us while you're driving. That might be a little unsafe, but you can go Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Yep. Cities 929.
As you can tell, we're still getting used to this. I appreciate you once again. But we do have the studio line, and we have the text line still available. And you can also join the chat on those live stream sources. But that's 309-451-9299. Hey, this is going to be a fast-forward moving show today. I have John Finch, my good friend from Texas, who wrote the book, The Father Effect. And, truly there is an epidemic going on right now in this country. And I think it is the catalyst to every other situation and problem that we face in society today. Culturally, we're lost, and we hear about all the distractions that we're trying to be drawn into these conversations, whether it be the whole transitional trans culture to the gun violence culture, illegal gun violence, of course. I want to make myself clear on that. But all of the conversations, whether it's on the world stage, in what's happening in Taiwan or Ukraine or in Syria or wherever you might be, there still is an underlying theme throughout the world, especially here in the United States, and that is the fatherless home epidemic. And I'm going to have John Finch here live, streaming and on the radio, talking about the fatherless epidemic. Also, I have Jim Rule that will be joining us here at the bottom of the hour. And Jim is going to talk a little bit about the future of the Republican Party in Illinois. And he also will give us an update on how things are going with the upcoming event that is being sponsored by the Peoria County Republicans and the Tazewell County Republicans, where they're hosting Ron DeSantis. That's right, you heard it. Governor Ron DeSantis will be in Peoria on May 12th for the combined joint effort of the Peoria and Tazewell County Republicans as they have their Lincoln Day dinner. We'll get all the other details from Jim. But, once again, before we bring Jim in, online or on air via live stream, I'd like to kind of just talk a little bit about some of the issues that we face here, because I know that it's easy to get caught up and to have this overwhelming sense of despair. I heard Darren Bailey talk about it on one of his lives the other day, that it always seems like we're just down in the dumps, that all is lost. Well, I believe that hope is eternal. I do believe that the best days are yet to come, as President Trump has pointed out. The best is yet to come. I know we're on the precipice, I should say, of that. And before it gets light, it always is the darkest. And I think that's what we're kind of sensing and feeling in this current climate that we're in. But some of the issues that I think that we will be pointing out, and I think it does dovetail with where we're at as a party on the Republican side of the aisle, is that the government continues to be a replacement as the father in the home. Statistics are staggering regarding the skyrocketing percentage of minority family fatherless homes. When children don't have a validation from a father, they will look for the validation elsewhere. This one really struck me. Over 18.3 million children living without a biological step or adoptive father in the home. 70% of the 18 million are from the Black community. Children who live in fatherless homes are 279% more likely to deal drugs and to illegally carry firearms. 1 out of every 3 pregnancies in fatherless homes ends in abortion. 63% of youth suicide victims are from fatherless homes. I mean, the evidence is there. I know we get caught up in a lot of the mainstream media talking points and the back and forth on the social media platforms and the division that's going on. There's no question about it. We're divided. Something that we're not divided about is there's a coming out. There truly is a coming out celebration for a lot of things. There's a coming out celebration for the trans community. There's a coming out celebration for all of those who believe in the Green New Deal. There's a coming out for about everything that you can look at coming our way via the mainstream media. The one thing you don't see a coming out party for, and that's fathers. That's Christian fathers, specifically Christianity, Christians coming out of the closet. You're not seeing that. And that's obviously part of the reason I feel we find ourselves so discouraged, especially here on Sundays. And I love having my show coming to you every Sunday here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal, on Sundays. Most of us, if we feel that that's part of our faith journey, is to participate in corporate worship. I encourage everyone to find a church home. And if you are looking for one, obviously, if you're watching live, you can see my T-shirt. We just had our Victorious Life with Pastor Timothy James Farrell. He is the pastor at the Tabernacle. I happen to have spent my morning there worshiping, learning about the One series, which you can also go and learn about via the Facebook page of the Tabernacle or at YouTube, where there's the tabernacletv.com is there, and you can hear the messages. But, it's important, I think, that we do have a coming out of fathers. I love the fact that Matt Walsh asked the question, what is a woman? And I think it's important that we define that in an adult female human. But I like to ask the question, what is a man? And I understand that could also be said, an adult male human. But I think it's deeper than that. And I think that's what we've lost. Obviously, the statistics that I just read off to you about fatherless homes. What have we become? And how did this happen? Why is it that there has been this slow undermining of the nuclear family in our culture? Has it been intentional? We hear it from many of our pundits on our weekly shows that they say that obviously the children are their target. Dividing the parents from their children in our public school systems, they are a target. What happens and what is allowed to happen in our public education system? If you would have gone back 50 years ago and, in the Wayback Machine, you would have said, no way. How in the world did we get from there to here? And once again, it has been this slow undergirding, especially, I think Larry Elder has said it, that if you go back to the 1970s and you look at the Black community overall, that 70% of those households, there was a father figure in those households. A father was in play. Now you get to 2023, and that number has flipped. 70% of households are without a father figure in the home. In fact, there is a small town just west of Texas, or just west of Houston in Texas, and I can't quite remember. I think it's not Richardson, but I'll get the name of it. But 90% of the households are fatherless homes. Those kids are left to be raised by grandparents or great-grandparents or single moms. So it's kind of cool because this has come on the radar of some of the folks that I am talking to, John Finch and others like him, and they've set up a campus inside of this community where men are donating, volunteering their time to come in and to be part of these young people's lives because it doesn't exist. 90% of the children living in this community come from fatherless homes. And what does that lead to? This last statistic, that 63% of youth suicide victims are from fatherless homes. Hey, we appreciate you once again joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I know it's important that you guys are out there and you want to know what's coming your way. And I think that what we do here via streaming, via the radio, is to try to keep you current with what we believe are the most pertinent issues that face you, not only locally, but on a statewide basis and on a federal basis. And I'm hopeful that we can continue the theme of exposing corruption. I know that this particular show is not going to be a whole lot about corruption because, once again, corruption is something that we can live on until the cows come home. I just saw that Michael Madigan has come back into the news cycle. The CEO of ComEd has been back into the news line, and all of the double dealings that were going on in the payments. And that kind of fell out of the news cycle for a while. The other things that have fallen out of the news cycle that are somewhat corruption is, will we ever see the manifesto of the killer in Nashville at the Christian school? Will we see a manifesto? I think we deserve it as the public to know where things are at. Obviously, a plethora of different issues that evolve around corruption because we are a corrupt society. But that's what we're pushing back on. We're standing up. We're exposing it. We're trying to get to the heart of the matter. I know that last week I spent a lot of time breaking down Dan Bongino's show, episode 1990, that deals with, Kevin's giving me a salute. Kevin, what's the salute that you're giving
Well, I
me?
just wanted to, because there was actually an article I was reading about the transgender manifesto
Go
thing.
ahead.
This is out of the Daily Wire from, what's today's date? Today's the 23rd, 2 days ago. from the Daily Wire, blueprint on
Hey,
total.
Kevin, I like the contrast of the two shirts, though. I've got the Tabernacle on, you've got the Metallica. Wow.
But same colors and everything,
That's a
right?
visual, yeah. It's like we planned this or something, but go ahead.
But blueprint on total destruction, astronomically dangerous. FBI delaying release of Nashville Shooters Manifesto, as officials say. The FBI may be sitting on what has been described as the Nashville School Shooters Manifesto because bone-chilling information within it could pose a continuing threat to the public, a Tennessee official said Thursday. The killer behind the March 27th massacre that left 3 9-year-old kids and 3 adults dead inside a Christian school was a 28-year-old woman who claimed to be a man. She fired 152 bullets in a 14-minute rampage inside the Covenant School. Carrying on, though, this is a quote from a Metro Nashville council member, Courtney Johnston, that says, "What I was told is her manifesto was a blueprint on total destruction, and it was so detailed at the level of what she had planned. This document in the wrong person's hands would be astronomically dangerous, the vast, overwhelming majority of it. I personally don't want to know the depths to which her psychosis reached. When I'm told by an MNPD high-ranking official that it keeps him up at night, I'm going to defer to that person in the agency that I don't need to read that." So I don't really know. Here's the thing is I think the public, like you said, the public deserves to know what's in this manifesto, but definitely should be treated with some gloves if it's true that of how, because here's the thing is one of two options. Either A, they're telling the truth and it is incredibly disgusting.
Yes.
Or B, they're trying to hide it from the public by claiming it's so incredibly disgusting.
Which is, once again, and that's why I believe getting out ahead of it. If there's things that we shouldn't be exposed to, by all means, I want those held back, especially if they divulge something that could lead to further criminal activity. But at the same time, the distrust for our current system is off the charts. And that's not going to go away until we start being candid and open about these things. That's why I love this issue today, Kevin. I think this fatherless epidemic is a big part of societal ills that we see and are facing on a day-to-day basis. The mental health issue alone, suicides, that in of itself is crazy. But hey, we're going to talk about this a little bit more. We're going to have Jim Rule with us talking about Ron DeSantis and the future of the Republican Party here in Illinois. When we come back from break here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. So not planned that Kevin and I would be both in black. It almost reminds me of AC/DC, Back in Black. He's got the Metallica shirt on, and I've got the Tabernacle Church. We don't feature the Metallica music. It's very good worship music, though, at the Tabernacle, but not quite Metallica. In fact, I think I'm going to sit down, take a little weight off of my legs. It's been a busy week for me.
If you take a look at your screen, so the way I've got it set up, and I'm going to fix it a little bit, now I can pull up these comments and you can address some. I believe that's your daughter.
Hey,
right there.
Go, Dad. I love you. Hey, that's from my daughter. That is so cool. Hi, Cassidy Ann. Cassidy, I love you.
This one from someone else as well. I don't know if you know this guy, but.
Yeah. Are you talking about up above?
I just put it on the screen right there.
Oh, this is super cool to see you live. Thank you, John Paul. Hey, John Paul, David Paul. I like that. Thank you so much for joining. That's us saying that. But I was going to say that taking a little weight off my feet, my wife had hip replacement surgery on Monday. And needless to say, it's been a busy week in her recovery. A lot of things going on. I did have an opportunity to do something I had never done in 59 years of life. I attended a baseball game at Wrigley Field yesterday with my friend. Obviously, you know him well. He contributes to our shows on many occasions, is Chuck Erickson. Chuck and I went up to watch the Cubs versus the Dodgers, and it snowed, Kevin. Can you believe that? Yeah, so I had never attended a Major League Baseball game where it snowed. Now, fortunately, Chuck and I were dressed accordingly, but I was amazed at the amount of people, Kevin, that don't have access to the Weather Channel because they didn't show up as if it was going to be 38 degrees and snow flurries there. So I found that fascinating. But, hey, appreciate you all joining us. I see that Mike Kerber is chiming in. Thanks, Mike, for being out there.
Make sure anything that brings things up on the screen. Right?
Okay, I see that.
See, your guests will start
Kevin is nailing it when it comes to this live streaming here at Cities 92.9. We are taking this to the next level, and you're seeing a lot of that out in the media world, where live streaming has kind of replaced a lot in podcasting, and rightfully so. I mean, people like to watch things live, and obviously, that's what we're doing. We're keeping up with it.
Next time. What
Mark
I'm thinking
Levin.
is at some point, I think I want to get this one, or maybe we get another monitor somewhere where I can pull that up so I don't have to have my laptop.
There used to be a monitor here.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know where it went.
I'll talk to John Hall about it. But let's
All
get you
right.
back on air.
Well, we're back here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And you know what? If you're just dialing in, or if you're tuning in to us on the live stream, you can do that at Twitter. You can do that at YouTube. You can do that at our very own Facebook page at Cities 92.9. We appreciate everything that you're doing to help our advertisers to continue to be able to bring you this type of content, because it is so important, as I've said in shows of the past, that we're one of a very few sources throughout the state of Illinois, actually throughout the Midwest, that brings content like this. You're not going to hear this on a lot of different radio programming. You're not going to see it in a lot of local newspapers. You're sure not going to see it at the national level on some of those channels. But you are going to hear right here at Cities, and that's part of the reason that we were targeted by not only the Washington Post when J.B. Pritzker was here in town for a debate against Darren Bailey, but the Chicago Tribune. They call us out. Even state representatives like Sharon Chung of the 91st State House District calls us Insurrection Radio. How cool is that? I mean, I think that that's a badge of honor, right? Because we dare to push back. We dare to question where we're at, which is part of what we're dealing with here today. Not only Jim Rule will be joining us here shortly from the Tazewell County Republicans, because Jim is a forward-thinking leader of his county and pretty much for the state party as a whole, because he has great ideas. Formerly of the United States Navy, Jim is once again on the cutting edge of understanding what it's going to take to move Illinois back in a direction of balance, balance. Because even if we just hope to achieve balance, I'm not talking about turning the state red. I'm talking about getting out of these super majorities where most of the state of Illinois, which is the landmass wise, is a huge state, right? 102 counties, but one county in particular with a couple additional collar counties around Chicago dictate how the state exists, how the state moves, and that's all done through legislation. But I think it's important to have a forward-looking growth plan, and I look forward to having that discussion with Jim at the bottom of the hour. He'll be back. He'll be with us after 1:30, and hearing his opinions of what we need to do next. You know, we heard Bongino's opinions. Obviously, we heard Chairman Don Tracy of the Illinois GOP, his opinions of unity, a big tent, and pretty much the same thing that we've been doing for a very long time. And finally, he got to the bottom of his list and priorities to say ballot chasing, which is really ballot harvesting, which means that we go after low propensity, low information voters like the left does, like the Democrat Party does. Because ultimately, when it's all said and done, only 27% of voters here in the McLean County election, on average about 25%, showed up to actually even cast a vote and make decisions for how we live locally. In Springfield, those decisions are already made. You know, like I said, we now have it's 70 73. No, it went up to 78. 78 to 40 is the number of representatives. In the Senate, it's 40 to 18. So there's definitely a weighted vote on the side of the Democrats. But we're going to cover all of that. And like I said, we're going to get to my good friend John Finch in the 2 o'clock hour, and we're going to talk about the epidemic of the fatherless home, which I think supersedes every other issue that we're talking about. I don't care what you're hearing about out there, whether it's the fentanyl crisis, the border crisis, the energy crisis, the World War III. Really, when it's all said and done, the issue that we have here in America is that fathers are no longer part of raising their children at an alarming rate. Now, that's not to say that there are no fathers in the household doing great things. There are. But we need to come alongside these other men who obviously have decided for whatever reason to not be part of raising their children, because the effects of it are devastating. I read that earlier, and I'm going to continue to get back to those facts, but we're going to be back here at Cities 92.9 with Jim Rule, the chairman of the Republican Party of Tazewell County, after break. All right, I need a little hydration.
Jim is in the waiting room. I'm going to bring him on, but I'm going to try to go to the bathroom real quick during the break.
All right, Jim's in the waiting room, and I'm getting some hydration. All right. Once again, thank you guys for joining. I don't know if you heard those statistics, but it's alarming. I mean, when you're looking at over 18.3 million children living without a biological step or adoptive father in the home, 70% of the 18 million are of the Black community. Children who live in fatherless homes are 279% more likely to deal drugs and illegally carry firearms. 1 out of every 3 pregnancies in fatherless homes ends in abortion. 63% of youth suicide victims are from the fatherless homes. This is just devastating, and I know that this is intentional. It's not like this hasn't been planned. I mean, it has been planned. The removal of fathers from the home, the overall effort to undermine parenthood in today's culture is real. I mean, this whole craziness of CRT and social emotional learning in schools and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all of that going on, where we're trying to openly deny parents the ability for school choice, really is about what I think President Trump said. They're not coming after him. They're coming after you. He just happens to be in the way. And, that's why I applaud President Trump for putting himself out there. What would have happened if we would have had a President Hillary Clinton in the White House? Can you imagine where we would be as a society and culturally? It would be so devastating. I mean, you talk about inflation, you talk about craziness of ESG scores and everything else like that. It is fascinating to realize that this was all stopped in its tracks because people stepped forward, like President Trump and others. Jim Rule being one of them. Jim, I think, is in the waiting room. Oh, there he is. I can see him right now. He isn't on though.
I'm gonna do it and fix it in a second.
Okay. All right. Kevin's on top of it. I'm not questioning it, Kevin. The guy with the Metallica shirt.
Metallica.
The Metallica, can you believe that? I have my Tabernacle shirt on, and Kevin has his Metallica shirt on.
Yeah.
We are all here. How you doing, Jim? You're live now on Cities 92.9, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
All right.
Well,
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Isn't this cool, Jim? So not only are we live on the radio.
Well, we're not live on the radio yet.
Not yet, but we
Got
will
about
be
30
live on
seconds.
the radio, but we'll be streaming too at the same time. So I think it's awesome. Hey, I am going to cover a little bit you might have seen it in the promo that we're going, and our audience right now can hear this, that we're going to talk a little bit about the future of the Republican Party going forward. And I know that bringing Ron DeSantis is a big part of that, because he's going to give us a little bit of his game plan of how he advanced the Republican cause in the state of Florida.
Okay. We're coming back.
Okay, we're coming back live. Well, we always appreciate you joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And now you can not only listen to us as you drive up and down Veterans Parkway or around McLean County, Tazewell, Woodford, Livingston, DeWitt. I think we've got a pretty good reach. But if you're home and you're safe, we don't want you driving and watching the live stream. You can live stream us at Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter, and soon, hopefully, we'll get to Rumble. But it's good to have you here. Obviously, the text line is open still. Studio line 309-451-9299. And as promised, for those of you watching us on live stream, you see the man. Well, there's the guy with the Metallica shirt. That's Kevin. We know him from Speechless. Thank you, Kevin, for always being here. Yours truly with the Tabernacle Church shirt. You can always catch Victorious Life on before the DPB show with Pastor Timothy James Farrell. And then now the screen shows Jim Rule, if you're watching this live stream. Jim is the chairman of the Tazewell County Republican Party. Jim, thanks for being with us today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's very cool to have you and to be able to see you, Jim, as we're live on the radio and we're streaming. But I'm just going to get right to it, Jim. Obviously, we've gone through 2 election cycles right now, and we were handed the proverbial good old-fashioned take us out to the woodshed.
Yes.
And hit us hard. And it doesn't appear that we're doing too much. Well, I should say statewide. I think you're doing things, great things in Tazewell County, because you guys did not lose seats in the November elections. In fact, you gained seats. So Tazewell County is worthy of being modeled. But we got this old-fashioned, butt kicking in the last 2 election cycles, especially here in McLean County. And statewide, we lost a lot of ground, too. Now, there were some bright spots that showed themselves, like Naperville getting a Republican mayor. But ultimately, what are we going to be able to do going forward in the Republican Party? I know that Chairman Tracy has come out and said that we need to be unified, which I think a lot of people are confused by what unity means, because people think that we should be of one mind and one heart, and that's not what unity means, but also that we should be a big tent. And haven't we already tried those recipes for failure?
I don't think we've tried it hard enough. I mean, Chairman Tracy has a good message in unity, but it's not resonating at all. And it's not resonating with the grassroots. And if you take a look at what's going on in the counties throughout the state and the message that's being delivered by the counties to their constituents, it's different than what the Illinois State GOP is delivering. And, when we look at the primary that occurred a year ago now, back in April of last year, it was a bloodbath. And we can never have that happen again. We've got to, it doesn't mean that we have to agree on everything, but we've got to stop lobbing grenades at each other. And we've got to start working towards the same ideal, the same objectives. This thing about unity is vitally important, but yeah, we've tried it. We keep talking about what we need to do, but we're not doing it. We're not actually rolling up our sleeves and getting out there and getting the job done.
Well, and do you think part of that is, Jim, is because we've went through 37, 40 years of this Michael Madigan way of doing business in Illinois? Obviously, we happen to be one of the most legally corrupt states, because I love how they put legal in front of corruption now, because they have managed a way to make it so it isn't that they're breaking the law. When you look at patronage and how people have been put in place, I was reading that ComEd article that these lobbyists that were in place and on the on the payroll of ComEd for $4,000 to $5,000 a month. You know, is there anything illegal about that? No. I mean, this is what lobbyists do, right? That's why I believe that there's a whole plethora of different ethics reform when you look at the inner workings of Springfield. But I'm talking about the inner workings of the Republican Party in the state, feeling some sense of being defeated from the get-go, and how we try. And I don't know if you heard this before coming on air. I'm not looking to turn the state red again. I'm just looking to get to purple, to find a balance in our state house and our Senate. I mean, living through supermajority after supermajority, and now the governor's office and all of the other statewide offices being held by Democrats, there is no balance in the state of Illinois.
You know, one of the things that I find, and I'm a precinct committeeman as well as being the chairman of the county, but when I knock on doors, when I talk to constituents, when I talk to people, wherever they might be, and they're Republicans, and I ask them, you know, what their thoughts are, they throw up their hands and they say, you know what, we've endured all this time with Madigan and with the legal corruption, and they're just tired. They're disengaged. They don't care. And you know what? They're moving out of the state, and that's where the problem's at.
You're kind of preempting me, because I was going to mention something about, obviously Mark Rubio came to Normal a few years back when Rodney Davis was trying to recapture his congressional seat, and Marco Rubio stood up in front of the crowd and said he believes that he was, you're right. That's why I was going to turn the thing, Kevin. Kevin's trying to get me. He goes, you're moving, and I've got my camera over here, and I've got Jim over here, so I don't want to feel like I'm ignoring Jim, but you're right. I guess I'm looking at Jim if I'm looking at this. Kevin's got to keep me on task here. But Marco Rubio said, I feel like I'm talking to future Floridians. So Ron DeSantis coming to Illinois, coming to this GOP dinner, the Lincoln Reagan dinner in Peoria, as a joint effort between the Peoria Republican Party and the Tazewell Republican Party, Ron DeSantis will be talking to potentially future Illinoisans or future Floridians here in Illinois when we continue to lose, on average, 100,000 residents from Illinois a year. I can understand throwing up your hands and saying enough is enough. Yeah. And so I know that Ron's not coming for that purpose, Governor DeSantis. He's coming to not only speak to the Illinois Republicans, but to give them hope, because he obviously has done great things in Florida at continuing to advance the Republican messaging down there. You know, he narrowly won his first gubernatorial race. So throwing your hands up, Jim, do you think that it's too far gone and we could ever get it back?
I personally do not. I don't think it's too far gone, but the time has come. I mean, we keep saying that that we're losing the state. We're losing the state. We are losing the state. We are sinking in a quagmire of corruption. We're sinking in a quagmire of all this wokeism, whether it be CRT or transgenderism or whatever. And so the time has come that we need to roll up our sleeves and take action now, or we will lose the state. We will become, it will become something that we can't get back. And that's what Governor DeSantis is going to speak to, is his Florida blueprint and what they do down there. They fought the mask mandates. They fought CRT. There's a lot of things that they did right. And whether you agree with DeSantis or not, whether you vote for him or not during the presidential election, that's not what this is about. This is, how do we save our state? Because we're at that juncture. We're at that crossroads where we've got to do something, and we've got to do it now.
Well, and Jim, obviously I respect you as not only a business leader, a party leader, a father, a husband. You've been inspirational to me. I always love our conversations. I don't know if you heard a little bit about my next guest that I'm going to have for the 2:00 hour. His name's John Finch. He wrote a book called The Father Effect. And you might be familiar with his work, but he has gone into prisons. He himself lost his father in junior high unfortunately, to suicide. But these statistics, Jim, that are in front of us, when we talk about what are the issues that really the underlying issues, it's the fatherless home. It's been in front of me for so long, Jim. I didn't realize that how statistically and how staggering these numbers are, but the government continues to be a replacement as the father in the home. Statistics are staggering regarding the skyrocketing percentage of minority family fatherless homes. When children don't have a validation from a father, they will look for the validation elsewhere. 18.3 million children currently are living in a home without a father figure. 70% in the Black community. Children who live in fatherless homes are 279% more likely to deal drugs and illegally carry firearms. 1 out of every 3 pregnancies in fatherless homes end in abortion. 63% of youth suicide victims are from fatherless homes. We have a newly elected mayor, Brandon Johnson, talking about the fact that there shouldn't be consequences for these kids. Well, I'm not here to say that it's the kids' fault either. Unfortunately, I believe it truly is that we're seeing this governmental takeover of our families.
Yeah. I read a book a couple of years ago called The Iron Triangle. I think that's what it was called. It talked about that very subject and why this is kind of all by design. In when we look at the destruction of the moral fabric of our country, of our state, it starts with a lot of these kids, and it starts with the almighty dollar, right? And the value that we place on the value that we're not placing on our children and their future. And one of the ways that they're suffering the most is through these fatherless families. And we've got to change that.
And statistically, it's proving itself out. If we really want to look at what's going on societally, and I know it's a distraction because we want to get caught up in all the conversation about transhumanism, the trans culture, and a plethora of other issues. I mean, abortion obviously out there, but we just were told that where do these abortions come from? Well, a third of them are coming from households where there's no father figure. We know how instrumental a father is. You take the father out of society, and what do we truly have left over?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And I think that ties itself in with the Republican way. We stand for fatherhood. We stand for motherhood. We stand for the family. We are the party of the working class family. I think that's flipped in the past couple of years. We're not made up of tech companies and big limousine liberals. That's not who funds our party. Our party is now the grassroots movement, and I know we saw that in this last election with or I should say the last general election with Darren Bailey, is he truly ignited the grassroots movement, and that's who wants a voice at the table in our statewide Republican Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the type of voices that we need to encourage throughout the state, time and time again. It's going to be a long battle, but I do not believe the state is lost. I do not believe that we've lost our way to the point where we can't get it back on track. We have to. And
we are the land of Lincoln. I don't believe it. Even it does. Before the light is the brightest, you've got to go through the darkness. Hey, if you're just joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal, I have the chairperson of the Republican Party in Tazewell County, Jim Rule. Jim's going to stay on with us because he needs to promote this big event that he has coming up on May 12th at the Peoria Civic Center, a joint effort between the Peoria County Republican Party and the Tazewell County Republican Party. They will be hosting none other than Governor Ron DeSantis, the nation's governor. Jim's going to give us more about that when we come back after break. I hope that you stick around because we also have John Finch coming on to talk a lot about this fatherless epidemic that's going on in our nation. Jim, hang on. We're going to be live here still on streaming. When we're not live on the radio, We are live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. All right, Jim. So obviously a lot of things that we could continue to talk about. And thank you for the work that you do. Obviously, you and others like you. I know when I say that it can seem darkest because I think even the Republican Party has been exposed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
For where we're at. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
we have got to come together. We've got to figure out who we are and what our message is and what we're going to be doing going forward. And we've got to get to it. And right now, leadership just doesn't seem to be getting it done. So we've got to figure it out. If it happened at grassroots level, that's where it has to happen.
Well, and so you can give some clarity to that for our audience that's joining us here on the live stream. How is it that we advance the cause of the grassroots? It's through like you said, you're a precinct committee person. I'm a precinct committee person. You happen to be the chair of the party. I'm the vice chair of the Republican Party here in McLean County for the town of Normal. But there are so few of us that participate.
But that's the thing. And we've got to get people, we've got to reach out. We reach out to kids. We go into the high schools to talk about them. Now, we are still working to get back into the high schools post-COVID, but we used to talk to them about being about politics, not about being a Republican or not being a Democrat or either way, but we talk to them about politics and how to, what it is that American exceptionalism stands for, what it is that the first principles mean when the founders found this country. And those are the type of things that we have to start doing. Yeah, sometimes it's one person at a time. It took us a long time to get here. It's going to take us a while to get back, but we've got to get back out to knocking on doors, talking to people, getting them engaged.
Well, I loved what Stephanie Trussell said during the campaign. She said, a lot of people make the statement, I don't do politics. Mm-hmm. She says, you might not do politics, but politics is doing you.
Remember the old comment, the old phrase, we never talk about religion and politics. We're at that point, David, where we have to start talking about religion and politics.
Yep.
And not be afraid of it.
And it's interesting you say that because Pastor Timothy James Farrell at the Tabernacle Church said that this morning.
Yeah.
We're having coming out parties all over the place. Trans people are coming out. Green New Deal people are coming out of the closet. But Christians aren't coming out of the closet. Yeah. I mean, it's time for Christians to stand up for their constitutional rights, which are protected in the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Hey, I think we're about ready to jump back on live, and we're just going to talk a little bit about your big event.
Okay.
All right. Do I turn this down?
Turn the volume off now with that little bar at the top.
I can tell you that I've never seen somebody work so hard behind the magical Christmas tree board across the way. That is our very own Kevin Ferris, who not only he does double duty on Sundays, and I hope you tune into his show. After my show, he will be airing from 3 to 5 with all of the pageantry of live streaming now here, which is pretty cool. I'm going to have to train myself, Jim Rule, to make sure I'm looking at the camera. I can hear you, but I find myself looking down, so I would not be good in TV. I've got to keep looking up into the camera. This is all new to me, obviously, to have multiple formats going on, being live on the radio, being live on live stream on social media via Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. If you're just joining us, I have Jim Rule on live stream with me, but I also have him live on the radio at Cities 92.9. Jim, once again, thanks for being with us here today at Cities.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So, Jim, you're having this huge, in the words of President Trump, you're having this little huge event coming up. There it is. Look at that. Man alive. I'm impressed. Kevin, I want to give you a raise. I'm going to have to pay you more. There it is. It's in the screen. Tell us a little bit about what's happening on May 12th over at the Peoria Civic Center, Jim.
We are having our annual Lincoln Day dinner. This is our annual fundraiser of the year. In every year, it seems to be getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. A couple of years ago, we had Oliver North. Last year, we had Vice President Pence. And, the question was, boy, what are you going to, last year was so successful. And they said, well, what are you going to do this year? We think we outdid ourselves. And we've got Governor Ron DeSantis coming in to talk about his Florida blueprint. That is the Lincoln Day dinner, which is a joint effort between Tazewell County and Peoria County. It'll be held at the Peoria Civic Center on May 12th. That's a Friday, May 12th. Social hour starts at like 5:30. Dinner will be about 6:15 or so. And we'll have a few things in the program right after dinner. And then we get into hearing from Governor DeSantis, and he'll talk about his Florida blueprint. And I'm hoping that we can glean a lot of information on what we need to do here in Illinois to fix our state, to get this thing back on track.
Well, and so tickets, I saw Kevin put that in at Tazewell GOP is one place that you can get tickets.
Yeah. Tazewell, tickets are $85 a piece. We kept the price low so that we could get as many people there as possible. But if you go to www.tazewellgop.org.
Oh,
yeah.
Kevin's got to change that to org real quick.
.org. And if you just click on our calendar, it'll take you to the Lincoln Day dinner. If you scroll down, there's a couple different events. There's the photo event, which we're having for those people that are so inclined. We are having a 30-minute roundtable with Governor DeSantis for a certain donation, and then the regular dinner itself is $85. And if you click on, there's a QR code or there's just a link that'll take you to the Win Red site that we have, and you can fill out all the information and register there. So that's actually what Kevin's got up as the save the date. There is actually a formal announcement that we've come out after that.
Is that on your Facebook? Because I'm looking at your guys' Facebook right now, and that's where I was looking to find.
Yeah, I can send it to you.
There
too.
we go. Okay, sounds good. Yep. Oh, there it is, right there. That's what you were just talking
about. Yep.
And that's for our audience. If you're just joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal, on air with me is Jim Rule, the chairman of the Tazewell County Republican Party. He is also live stream. If you want to take an opportunity to see us live, we are there at Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Jim, your point about the the price on the tickets, $85 for per person. There's other offerings and sponsorships, but it truly is unique to find a price like that for such a big name like Ron DeSantis. How many tickets are you anticipating selling?
We are anticipating about 1,000.
So, and obviously,
we're about halfway there right now.
And I was going to say, you guys probably have nailed it and are hitting upon all cylinders right now. So this event is going to sell out.
We think so, yeah. Absolutely.
I'm going to make that prediction right now. So if you're listening here in McLean County, Tazewell County, Livingston County, Woodford County, DeWitt County, I know I'm going to leave somebody out, Ford County, you too can travel. Obviously, it's Central Illinois. This is a regional event. And so
if you're even streaming right now and you're from up in the Chicagoland area, you're down by St. Louis, we'll welcome you. And they're welcoming anybody.
Yes.
You could drive in from Iowa, from Indiana, who cares?
Well, and they did. I think for Pence, there were people that came in from Indiana, from Missouri, from Iowa, which is very cool. And it's so awesome that we have you, Jim, kind of as the leader here in Central Illinois, pushing these issues and getting these speakers in. I know we're up against the end of our segment, but Jim, once again, give our audience the rubber stamp on how they can get themselves a ticket for this event.
Yeah, TazewellGOP.org, or you can visit our web. That's our website. That's the best way to do it. Go to our website. It'll get you where you need to go, through just a couple clicks. If you just want to talk over the phone, call me. My number is 309-208-9930, and I'm more than welcome to talk people through it, or we'll do it over the phone. But let's get to this thing and listen to DeSantis, and then let's roll up our sleeves and get to work.
Well, there you go. And I love the picture on the wall, Jim, in your office there. That looks of days gone by of George Washington. I don't know where exactly that
That's Valley Forge.
I was going to say Valley Forge, but I didn't want to show my ignorance. There he is at Valley Forge. Also found out a little factoid that George Washington carried a .56, so 56 caliber gun. That's what he did. And here we're having all this legislation. Hey, we appreciate you, Jim, joining us here. We've got to get to a sponsors break, or I'm going to get knocked off here. But once again, we're going to get you back on before the event here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. All right, let me get you unmuted, Jim.
That was fun.
Oh, wait a second. How do I mute? There we go. Oh, hold on. All right, Jim.
That was fun. Thank you.
No, thank you. I got to turn it down. Kevin's giving me instruction on how to work the laptop.
Yeah, I got a lot of work to do to keep making it work, but we'll definitely stay in touch about everything that we're working on for this event. I'll be mentioning it during my show today too. So.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll continue to promote it. Thank you, Jim, once again. Thank you for all you're doing, and we'll get you back on air here shortly.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Have a blessed day.
You do the same, my friend.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay.
Now you can turn that off. I can bring John Finch in if you want. Okay. Or do you want to introduce him a bit?
Yeah, yeah.
He's in the waiting room there.
Is he? Yeah, John's ready. Hey there, John.
Hey, fellas, what's up? Can you hear me?
John, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I love it. Look at that. Your life is your legacy. I love it. And now you can see me in studio.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Better ones. So
yeah,
the soundboard causes a reverb during breaks, so I have to put it in program for you to be able to hear them well through the headphones and stuff.
Okay.
So it's just easier during breaks to do it on there.
We're still working out all the glitches of taking radio live, John. So once you're on the air, it's so much better. But thankfully, I've got this 22-year-old from Illinois State University across the way who has his own show after mine and called Speechless. So
nice.
For our audience out there right now that sees John in the camera, this is my friend, John Finch. You're going to hear a little bit more about how we came to know each other, but you're going to hear his story. And it is truly, I think, the biggest issue facing us as Americans. In fact, I think it's an issue that basically resounds around the world, and that's the fatherless epidemic. So, John, say hello to the audience. They can hear you.
Hello, hello.
I think we
got about 3-4 minutes.
About 3-4 minutes until we go back live on the air. John, tell our audience a little bit about the father effect and how you came to basically put forth the book and now a movie.
Yes. So just in a nutshell, it's kind of just a story of my own journey and my father committing suicide when I was 11, and just the journey of what happened after that, and me really walking away from God, running away from God in some instances because of the anger issue I had as a result of my dad's kind of betrayal and abandonment. And it's got a happy ending in the sense that God brought me back around and helped me find forgiveness from my father, which was the game changer. That was what radically changed my life. And that's the message we're trying to get out there, is the importance of forgiveness. I mean, forgiveness is the gospel, right? It's why Jesus died for us. Mm-hmm. And so it's about forgiveness, and that's our message.
Well, and John, I was reading to our audience a little bit about the gentleman you shared his video. I don't have his name up in front of me right now, but he too has put out a documentary. And he gave some of the statistics that are out there. And I think it's fascinating that there, Kevin's fixing my screen for me. But, 18.3 million children are growing up without fathers, whether that be a stepfather or an adoptive father or a biological father. Children of fatherless homes, 279% of those children, or they have a 279% more likely chance of dealing drugs or carrying illegal firearms. I mean, 1 out of every 3 pregnancies, fatherless home ends in abortion. 63% of youth suicide victims are from fatherless homes.
Wait, did you just interview Eric Swithin?
No, I'm taking from his documentary.
I was going to say, yeah, because literally, dude, I talked with him on the phone probably 3 weeks ago or so. He reached out to me and was like, bro, I wished I would have known you before we did documentary, because a lot of what he talks about, obviously there's some similar messages within our film as is his. So we had a kindred spirit right away. Matter of fact, I'm helping him do some translating of the movie into other languages. So it'll hopefully get a global audience, and God can really do some amazing things with it.
And all things are possible with God. Okay, it sounds like we're going to be back live here, John, and I will bring you in for our live audience. We talking about finding a light, that is how we operate around here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We are advancing, upgrading constantly. Kevin Ferris, my colleague across the way, comes in and gives of his time to produce my show, then doubles down and has his own 2-hour show called Speechless. Kevin, once again, thank you, as always, for being here for me on Sundays, and our audience, obviously, and our sponsors who make this possible. You can catch us not only on Cities 92.9 via radio, but you can stream us from the app. You can come and watch us live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And we're going to continue to do this because it is awesome to see and hear from you. We know it's resonating around the Central Illinois marketplace. For our audience on the streaming, they just met John Finch, but I want to give him a little more of a formal introduction. I heard John on a radio program hosted by a gentleman out in the Northeast. It was one day when I was kind of dwelling in a cave in my own way of coming out of a divorce and trying to find what God had in store for me. And I came upon John Finch, and John was in the midst of talking about what he's going to talk about today, which is the father effect and the impact that fathers have on the household. John, thank you once again for joining us here on the DPB show. It's always good to have you. It's been almost about a year since you were here. And unfortunately, I think we've made some headways of getting this message out about fatherless homes, but there's so much more work to do. Let our audience know a little bit about what you've already shared with those who are watching us on live stream.
Brother, I always appreciate the conversation with you. I enjoy it. And I am appreciative of you and just letting me have the opportunity to kind of tell the world a little bit about what we're doing. And so, my story is one that we've put into film that we released. It's probably been about 5 years ago or so now. Mm-hmm. And it's a story of my journey of growing up without a father and really going about what the world says a man should be, right? I bought totally into what the world says. It's about power and money and success and all those things, because I didn't have that father walking alongside me, showing me or telling me different. that was my main influence, was TV and media and all those things. And obviously we know how those distort the truth and lie to us about what's really important. So I just bought totally into that. I was an angry guy. I was very angry at my dad for leaving me and betraying me because he committed suicide. And I was very angry at God. And I just took that anger, and my thing was medicating that anger, right? I could justify all of the medicating the anger because it was kind of a victim mentality, right? You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what I'm dealing with. And so I medicated this wound, this father wound that had been left in me, with alcohol. And it was about 12 years ago now that God kind of just took me to this place of real brokenness to get my attention. And it was a place he had to take me to get my attention, because I was just having too much fun running from him. And he showed me forgiveness from my father. And that was the game changer, the catalyst for radical life change in my life.
And before we get into all of the amazing things you're doing, and not only in the prison ministry, but then the outreach to other men's groups, because I think that this is the call that all of us face as fathers, husbands, boyfriends, males. You know, I was mentioning earlier that Matt Walsh came out and asked, what is a woman? I think that we should ask the question, what is a man? What is a man in today's society? Kevin, do you have the intro video to the Father Effect trailer?
I have the movie trailer. Yes.
John, I want to share with our audience, not only here streaming, but live on the radio, the intro. And it's a little longer than what radio usually does, but I want them to get the full effect of the Father Effect movie.
Give me one moment. Still pulling it up here. But maybe you can stall for another minute. Okay?
Well, and David, to your point, I think that is a big question. What is a man? Because I think most men, young men especially, don't know what that looks like to be a godly man, to be a real man, right? I've got a good friend of mine who's a pastor and has been counseling people for years. And he's got a group of about 6 or 8 young guys in their 20s who he meets with every week, and they're just dying to know just the basic, simple stuff of what it looks like to be a man, how to love your wife and your family, and how to lead and all of those things. So it's a great question.
Well, and you know, it's interesting, and I know Kevin's about ready to run that video, but I was led to scripture the other day, John, from Acts, and I want to kind of pull that up here, but basically within that scripture, it basically said coming up with 7 men. I used to say Jesus came up with 12 men, right? He called 12 disciples. Can we find 7 men in our lives that we could minister to speak into their lives, to find out where their hurts, habits, and hangups are, you know, and how we can advance beyond that? Because ultimately, this epidemic of fatherless homes is growing. It's not decreasing. The issues of mental illness that are basically evolving out of this crisis is growing, unfortunately. And you know, when we can talk about a lot of solutions to the world's problems, I think this one in particular is big. I know Kevin's got it queued up. We're going to go ahead and play the trailer for the Father Effect movie.
We have a whole generation of men who don't understand how much they mean to our kids, for our radio audience.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Kevin, you're thinking all the time.
So, boy and his dad driving in their car.
That actually happens to be.
It's so cloudy.
His dad.
I was never prepared to be a father. I had no idea how hard it would be, or how heavy the responsibility would feel. You know, it doesn't seem right to have that much influence over one small life. the way they look up to you and how easy it is to let them down. Maybe if my dad had been there, it would have been easier. But he wasn't. I grew up most of my life without a father. I can remember his face, but I can't remember a life with him. The last time I saw him, it was on a school day. He was always gone in the mornings, but for some reason he was able to drop me off that day. He even gave me a kiss. I will never forget that day.
Every time I
It was
see
so
that, John,
cloudy.
obviously I don't know the impact it has on you because you lived it. I did not live it, but I relive it through your trailer there and then the movie itself, which I hope our audience, if you get an opportunity, and John will continue to give you advance notice on how you can come about a copy of that movie. Obviously, his book is out there. But John, playing that, and I know that our radio audience couldn't get the full effect of that, but you can by going out to YouTube and just searching for the Father Effect movie. And then that gives you information on how you can download that. And but John, I started telling you, it says in Acts 6, 1-7, it basically says in the context of that, brothers, select among you 7 reputable men filled with the Spirit and wisdom. And I think that's what we really find lacking in today's culture for a plethora of reasons, no matter what that is. I love what we were speaking into your friend and colleague who you're going to help edit. And I, of course, jumped away from the screen real quick here, but you can give, let's see, I know that it's at the top of it. It's Eric Swithlin. Is that how you say his name?
I think it's Swithin, yeah.
Swithin. But Eric has a documentary that he puts out that gives a bunch of the facts of what we're currently facing in this fatherless epidemic. And I had mentioned earlier in my show that, you know, we have a lot of coming outs in America right now, right? You see it across the secular way of life, whatever that might be, the latest and greatest. It's going to be interesting when Christians finally decide to come out and come out of the closet, you know, the proverbial coming out of the closet, because that's what it's going to have to happen for an awakening in our churches and across this land of ours. How else are we going to be able to get the fathers to take that position where these children have homes where they know, as you had mentioned, what truly is a man?
Yeah, I think Eric does a great job to your point. Here's where we've missed the mark as churches, right? As the church, is it says very clearly in the word, we're to care for the orphan and the widowed, right? And yet the churches do not do a good job of that. It's hard to get them involved in ministries specifically related to fatherlessness. I've got several friends of mine that have ministries, and it's just tough to get churches involved for whatever reason. I'm not sure what that is. It's probably several different things, but you know, it also goes back to this generational thing. It is, we talk about what is a real man. Well, most men, I run into 2 guys typically, and it's the guy who wants to be a great dad. He just doesn't know how, right? Because it wasn't modeled for him. And so the other guy is the guy who thinks he's doing a great job, but he's comparing himself to Bob, the next door neighbor, who's spending 5 minutes a day with his kids. So if he spends 10 minutes, he thinks he's twice the great dad, right? So it's one of those scenarios where the first one, and it's the one that plays out most of the conversations I have, is guys want to be good dads. They just don't know how, because it was never modeled for them. It was never modeled for their dad. It was never modeled for their grandfather. It was all of these different things. And what Eric's documentary does well is he kind of tracks that and shows you how the men from World War II came back, and it was all about providing and everything. And so we set this standard early on that men are only supposed to provide, and that's a lie. It's only going to provide. No. We have to be engaged emotionally in our homes with our kids and our wives. That's a key part of what we're doing as a family and how future generations will behave and be.
Well, and that's, I think Eric does an amazing job of laying out historically how we kind of have come to where we're at. Now, interesting, as my wife and I early morning this morning were watching Eric's documentary, she did put in there that from a governmental standpoint during the years of FDR, then we started this thing called welfare, which provided a sense of security for a group of people, which made it easier for there to be a father figure in the home. And she said, how does that kind of weigh itself out? I think, Kevin, I don't know if you were able to pull that clip from Eric that I sent you from his documentary, that it was about 40 seconds.
What, do you remember? Let me find the minutes of it. I have
it was like at 16:30. But basically, he says, if you were Satan, how would you impact the world greater than any other means? And that would be to eliminate the figure that historically was the provider, the caregiver, the emotional support, the leader, the cheerleader, the person who said, get out there. But unfortunately, what we saw historically was men being void from emotion because they did come back from World War II and they weren't willing to tell their story. They kept it inside.
I have that clip for after the break.
He does have the clip for after the break. Hey, John, I have to always pretend here that I'm also doing radio besides looking at you in a TV screen. This is so foreign to me now, but we're going to be back here with John Finch. It is such an honor to have him with us via live streaming, plus on the radio, the author of The Father Effect and the Father Effect movie. John, I hope that you're here for the long haul today, because I plan on having you for a while. But we're going to be back with John Finch after we come back from our sponsors hour, where we give our opportunity to those who support our radio programming here in Central Illinois. But we will be back with John Finch shortly after this, but I'm going to remain on the air. If you want to flip over to Facebook Live or Twitter or to YouTube, we're going to have a little discussion off air.
You're off air.
Okay. Now, once again, the quality is not going to be the best, John. I'm trying to.
I already got it.
You got it all turned up?
It should be good. So
okay.
If he just starts talking, he should be good to go.
But my wife was willing to type out some of the statistics for me, John, on Eric's documentary. And I like I said, this now, because I think since the last time I had you, I was steeped in a gubernatorial race here in Illinois, which when you talk about the cause, a lost cause in Illinois, trying to shift a state that openly taxpayer-funded abortions on demand, people coming from Indiana, Missouri, Wisconsin, Michigan, all over the Midwest, because we will do that for anyone. You don't have to be a resident. We have bills that are being put forth for gambling. I mean, I think we're going to lead the nation in gambling casinos. Marijuana, legalization of marijuana obviously came, and I think that's pretty prevalent across the land. But now we have dispensaries everywhere, similar to Colorado, but we never get at the root of the problems. Tell our audience who's watching this live.
You know what, dude? That's the biggest frustrating thing for me, being in this space now for 13 years. It's when are we going to have that very high profile politician or just anyone that's going to step up and really take the reins of this fatherlessness issue, and make a difference? Because, it's going to take somebody that's got a lot of influence and a huge platform, and that will carry it long term. A lot of people, there's been several that kind of jump in it and then they're out of it and going on to other projects or doing other things, right? But nobody's in this for the long haul that can take and carry this baton to really make an impact. Because if you think about it, just to your point, all of our social issues, whether it's incarceration, addiction, teenage pregnancy, cutting, a lot of these things come back down to fatherlessness or a father wound. And it's something we've got to change somehow, some way.
Well, we're going to be going back live here, and I'd like to kind of touch upon that when we come back. I know Kevin has our clip, but we always appreciate you joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I know it's a little frigid outside. In fact, when I was at Wrigley Field yesterday, the snow started coming down during the Dodgers-Cubs game, and the organist started playing that the weather outside was frightful and let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. I didn't think that was very good humor. There were a lot of people freezing their tails off at Wrigley Field yesterday, and the Cubbies were not victorious, but we're used to that. Obviously, that's what makes us Cub fans, right? We will wait till next year. If you're just joining us here on the radio, I believe that this guest of mine, who has been on my show before, is probably one of the most impactful people that we have right now in our country, because he is willing to tackle an issue and has been after this for like 13 years. And that's the fatherless epidemic that exists. I know we want to cover a lot of issues and solutions to our problems, but the biggest problem I think we face statistically, I mean, these are facts, and it's showing itself out in a lot of other ways, is fatherless homes. Thank you, John, for joining us again on the DPB show here at Cities 92.9.
Thanks for having me back, brother.
Well, it's always good to have you. When we were off air, so our live stream audience, and if you are joining us via radio, you can always cut over to Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Shameless plugs, John. We're just starting to do this. We're building what we know a lot of people want to see. They want to see us, outside of just hearing us on the radio, see us having these conversations. And this conversation, I believe there is no greater conversation that needs to be had. But we were talking off air about the fact that Illinois, the state of Illinois, not only has taxpayer-funded abortion, so that means that anyone from anywhere in the Midwest or California, New York can come and get an abortion taxpayer-funded. So obviously taxpayers are funding this abortion. Gambling, we are. I don't think we're leading the nation in gambling, but we're one of the states that is pushing legalized gambling, legalized marijuana, which is a lot of what we're seeing are the problems of fatherless homes and the addiction and everything else like that. Go ahead and kind of bring our radio audience up to where we were at off air.
Well, I think we were talking about the fatherlessness and what Eric's done with his movie. It's interesting. We interviewed in our movie, there's a guy by the name of Gordon Dalby, right? And I think here's one of the issues that we've got to make clear and make dads now understand how we have to change and pivot in the way with things we used to do. Is Gordon Dalby off camera, we were sitting and having a conversation. He said, John, at a very young age, we start telling young boys, especially at 4, 5, 6 years of age, not to be real. He said, here's what we do. When they fall down on the soccer field or football field or whatever, they start crying. We're like, hey, suck it up. You're okay. Man up. You're a big boy, blah, blah, blah. So at a very young age, we're drilling in their heads not to be real about their emotions, right? So then we turn around and wonder, well, we have 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old men who can't be transparent, who can't feel like they can cry and show real emotions because of the lies that we've been told all our lives. This real man don't cry stuff is just a crock. I've cried in front of my daughters and I'm not ashamed of it.
Mm.
I want them to see the real me, right?
Yes.
That I'm a man of emotion, that I'm a man of passion, that all of the and of flaws. I am not perfect. Any of my daughters will tell you I am the least perfect man, and I still mess up. But it's in the conversations that we have after my mistakes that they're able to see that I am just human, that I'm more than dad, that I'm not some superhero, that there's this expectation level, right? I can just be me with all my faults and flaws. And it shows them a couple of things. It shows them they can be flawed and it's okay too. They don't have to buy into this comparison stuff that most young ladies do, right?
Yep.
It's constantly perfection and all the other stuff they see on social media. So it's through those conversations and things like that that we got to do better, right, as fathers.
And we're going to do better. And John's going to remain on with us here live on the radio, but also on live streaming. And we've got one of those shameless sponsor plugs, again, that we've got to give our opportunity to those that support our programming here. But John, I want to continue that conversation because obviously I'm a father of daughters. You are a father of daughters, and the impact that fatherhood has on little girls and then eventually big girls, and what the ramifications are if they don't have that compass of a real man, of what is a man. So we're going to cover that when we come back here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Oh, we lost a camera. John, I'm going to... That's your camera? All right, John. I've got you back on the live stream here. Thank you. I'll tell you one thing that I have found out about the live radio, and it took me this long to realize it, John. After 2 hours, I have to go take a nap.
Yeah, the emotional drainage is pretty significant, huh?
Well, and juggling all the technology now, and thankfully, like I said, the young man across the way, Kevin Ferris, came into my life. He and another young man named Josh Bender, who is now teaching history in Nevada, graduated from Illinois State University. Kevin's about ready to graduate. He's also an ambassador for Turning Point USA in Charlie Kirk, and has headed up some of their programming here on campus. But great young man to have. Oh, am I back on?
This was dead air. No, you're good.
Okay. Kevin's juggling things, but Kevin came into studio to do my show with Josh Bender. They already had a podcast going on, and I literally needed oxygen as fast as they were talking. And I went to the corner office here at the radio station and said, you got to give these guys a show. They are dynamic. They're young men who have dealt with a lot of what we're talking about. And they've elevated themselves, a little bit with the influence of their father figures in their lives, but they're doing things. And they can be impacted by it. So,
yeah, I think the younger generation, there's a lot of really good things going on with them. Older people like that younger, like our grandfathers and stuff did with us, right? Oh, they don't know what those youngins and whatever. But there's so many good things about the younger generation that I love, and I think they're going to be able to change some things and switch some things up, and maybe correct some of our errors of our generation. We'll see.
Well, and especially that one that there he is, Kevin Ferris, across the way.
I just wanted to say real quick, a shout out to Pam. She went to ISU with my dad back in the 70s and 80s. So, hi, Pam. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, Pam.
Hey, Pam. So, but coming home from the war, World War II, and holding deep within their hearts, as I know my father did, it had to get all the way up till the end of his life when we found out that he had almost a catastrophic accident in a demolition dive, where he was blown out of the water, and a couple of the sailors didn't make it. Never heard that story.
Oh, wow.
Till the end of his life. And when he would tell it, he just wept and wept, because once again, he wasn't supposed to tell that story. He's supposed to
think about all those guys that came back from war, especially that in the World War IIs and World War Is and all of that, that kept all that trauma in and never talked through it and worked through it and found help for it. It's crazy.
And how that impacted their families.
Absolutely. Yes. The addiction, right? To cover up those bad memories and everything else was rampant. Yeah. Always has been.
Well, John, I think we're about 2 minutes of coming back on. Minute and a half, Kevin says. We're going to hit the clip from Eric's documentary. I'm going to read a little bit. We'd love to get into daughters and the impact that fathers have on daughters, but I love the post that you put up. One of the most important things a father can do for his daughter is to make sure she understands how deeply she is loved and cherished by him and God. One of the first commenters on our chat room was my daughter, Cassidy, is tuning in and giving her dad thumbs up. So
keep up the great work, brother. I tell you what, so many of those too, it's not, I'm reminding myself, it's reminding myself of also these things, not because I don't have them all figured out. I do not have it all figured out. So I'm constantly reminding myself of what I need to be doing daily to be a better dad.
All right, we're coming back live. All right, Kevin, I had to turn down the volume. We do appreciate you joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Hey, it is the DPB show. I'm David Paul Blumenshine. On the line with me is John Finch. He is the author of the Father Effect book and movie. And you can see that. Go to YouTube right now. You need to look it up because all of the content of everything we're talking about today is covered there at much greater length. John, obviously, for our radio audience, they weren't able to hear a little bit of our discussion. And we get so much accomplished sometimes off air. And I find myself losing, perspective, especially now that I go 2 hours without stopping versus that opportunity to kind of exhale when the commercials come on. But, this, before going to break, we had talked about the vulnerability of men in today's society versus days gone by, especially those that came back from World War II or even currently. And I think Eric points this out in his documentary, in the Hispanic community. Work is such a priority. Granted, there's God and there's family, but then there's hard work. And I almost think at times hard work gets put in front of family. And I think that's the easiest thing to do. In fact, I want to go ahead and play Eric's documentary here for not only our radio audience, but our streaming audience. So you can hear, it's about 45 seconds, but he brings up the point of where we're going in society. Go ahead.
The door wide open for him to get through. Let's break this down according to military intelligence, right? There's an acronym in counterintelligence. It's MPCOA, Enemy's Most Probable Course of Action. In other words, on a spiritual level, if I were to put myself in Satan's shoes, how would I decimate a culture? Where would I start? What would be my number one strategy? What would be my starting point? How would I go about doing it? Well, it seems to me a very logical plan to get inside the nuclear family, take out dad, and for generations to come, breed and multiply broken girls and broken boys. And those boys go out broken, and guess what they do? They hurt more girls. They hurt their children. I got everybody?
All right, we'll cut it there, Kevin. John, I don't think you could say it any better, can you?
No, actually, as we were talking, I was thinking about that exact scene because it is very much back to the generational thing, right? And if the enemy, as he said, I don't want to restate it, but it is the core of family health, right? If a dad is healthy in the best way he can be, both mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then there's a pretty good chance that family's going to be healthy, right? But if you take him out, if he is I mean, just beaten down, broken, all of these various things, attacked, and doesn't know what to do or how to defend an attack, right, from the enemy, and deal with all the different things that we should be able to deal with as dads, then it just becomes chaotic, and it gets very distorted and destructive. And it's interesting, the broken girls part, right? It's we even that being generational. I've talked to so many women that they're just mirroring, they're a reflection of what their moms are. And a lot of them don't even know it, right? They don't even see it. And that's the sad part about it. With me, with 3 girls, I see it with a lot of their friends, have for years. I can spot the one girl that's probably got a little bit of a fatherless issue within a couple of minutes, usually, because of some of the things that play out and how she acts.
And I remind myself, because you talk about weeping over a book. I took my copy of Meg Meeker's book, Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, and literally the pages of it were, it looked like somebody dipped it into a bucket of water. I cried because, once again, the impact, how for the first time, no one ever taught me that when I walked into a room, that my daughter heard my voice, and that voice was like no other voice that she ever heard, and how that influenced her, and how that imprinted upon her mind, her heart, at the cellular level, everything. Because, once again, she is the flesh of my flesh.
There's a great story that Dr. Meeker told me off camera as we were making the documentary and doing an interview with her. And she talked about, and you could see just the sparkle in her eye, even as I'm not sure how old she is. She's, probably 50s, 60s, if you will. And the sparkle in her eye, even retelling the story about, she overheard her dad on the telephone talking to someone, telling them how Meg was going to med school and how he was so incredibly proud of her and how she was going to be this great success. He didn't know she was listening. She was like on the stairs and there was a wall, and she just happened to catch the conversation. And she stopped, leaned up against the wall, and just listened to him speak words of life and love and encouragement to somebody else about how amazing his daughter was. And that's the power of the influence we have as fathers. And I think most dads don't understand that, right? And that's what we're trying to do. It's educate fathers on the voice and the power and the influence they have is life-changing. It's eternal in some instances, right? It's by us following God and loving God and all of these things. Our kids tend to do the same thing. One of the interviews we had with Neil Jeffrey, he does this great line. He says, I was following my dad, and I followed who he was following, which was Jesus.
Yeah. Yep. You know what? I know that the enemy at times can use this philosophy of pick a target and freeze it, isolate it, and do not let it go. I think it's time that we use the enemy's tools. We need to pick targets, and we need to freeze it. And I think parenting is one of those targets. And once again, for our listening audience, I love this post that you put up on Facebook. You can go to the Father Effect. If you're just joining us here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I am David Paul Blumenshine, the DPB show. John Finch, author of The Father Effect. His Facebook page is out there. But you put this up. One of the most important things a father can do for his daughter is to make sure she understands how deeply she is loved and cherished by him and God. And that's what you were referring to with Dr. Meg Meeker. If you indeed freeze it, if you target it, if you go after it with laser focus on parenting, and granted, I know there are plenty of men out there who are just trying to figure out how to get their next breath, right? I mean, to even start to deal with everything we're talking about today. But that's why this conversation is so important. The other thing that you put up was this: your kids learn to show Jesus to others by watching others see Jesus in you. And that's that point is, I just followed you because you were following Jesus. And how simple that is.
Yeah, and even in the movie, the movie we did, when I asked the question, how did your heavenly father influence your view of your earthly father? And it was interesting. It played out in so many different ways, but even us as dads, understanding the influence we have about how our kids view God, right? If we're the distant, aloof father, they're going to think, well, he's just kind of over there, and I'll go to him if I really need him, but I don't have any daily interaction with him, right? And one of the guys we interviewed was a pastor at a church, and he said, John, he said, I knew my dad loved me. He showed me that and told me that, and I just saw it every day. He goes, so when I was presented with the gospel, he's like, yeah, it just totally makes sense. My earthly father loves me, forgives me, cherishes me, loves me, is proud of me, all these different things. So it was an easy transition for me to believe in a heavenly father that did the same. Now, there's a lot of stories out there of the opposite, of an earthly father being so abusive and all of these different things that then they start to see God as the same way, or they're even agnostic or atheist because of that relationship.
Well, and I love the point you were making earlier, John, about the historical perspective, but not only that, I know that in your household, with mom, or I think you tell this story. I don't know if this was your exact household. Well, I think it was. Sometimes my mind at 59 years of age,
We're old.
I
Yeah.
lose the connection. But it's the repeated behavior about getting into multiple relationships and then to walk that out and having your children see that, especially for little girls or little young men, seeing a mom who gets into maybe not a healthy relationship, and then that particular relationship ends up impacting a life because it's, once again, duplicating something that wasn't intended to be.
Well, and even more so, it's as distorted and bizarre and dysfunctional as that can be. Let's say you have a mom who's been married 5 times and can't seem to find the right guy, always seems to go after the whomever. The daughter sees that and she begins to think that it's normal, right? We're creating in our own homes what normal is. So as whatever distorted or unhealthy that is, it makes sense to us as kids. So I could tell you, hundreds of stories of moms who literally followed that pattern, didn't realize it, but they were replicating and doing exactly what they saw their mom do. Whether it was having relationships outside the marriage because they didn't think anything was wrong with it. That's what their mom did, right? Or multiple marriages, or the feelings of shame and unworthiness and guilt. There's a lot of that's generational stuff. It's passed down through generations. And it's just as prevalent as in moms to daughters as it is in fathers to sons.
Exactly. In fact, I think Meg Meeker has written a book, Strong Fathers, Strong Mothers, Strong Sons, right? And
Yes,
Raising
yeah.
Warriors. And right over your shoulder, I think it says it best, John, that your life is your legacy. And I don't think you can, set your children up for no greater success in life than to truly model what it's like to be a man. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of our work cut out. Hey, John, I do want to keep you. I know we're going to be up against a break again, and then we're going to have a short segment to wrap up the show. But as this has really been put on my heart lately, especially at my own church, and you can see that here on the Tabernacle Church versus Kevin's shirt. Kevin, can we get a shot of your shirt so the streaming audience can see it? That's Metallica. We both have shirts on here today, one Metallica, one Tabernacle Church. But we've started a men's ministry to try to revitalize that, because it's something I think there's been, like you said, there's been a lot of great movements, Promise Keepers being one of them, many others, but they just weren't sustainable. I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, John. Have you got an opportunity to go see His Only Son?
Oh, no, I have not yet.
You got to go see it. I went with my wife, and it's one of those when you walk out of the theater, you just don't talk to each other, because it truly is riveting to realize that the story of Jesus was foretold through Abraham and his only son. and the willingness to take your son to the altar to sacrifice, that is beyond words. But I know that we're once again up against a commercial break. Hang on with me. I'd love to come back and then have you wrap this thing all together and tell our audience, both on streaming and live on the air, how they can get in contact with you and be part of the Father Effect movement. All right. We're going to do that right here shortly. Okay. All right. That's like me, John. I got to hydrate.
Yeah, I mean, Diet Coke should be like a sponsor or something, because I'd probably keep them in business, unfortunately.
My wife is a Diet Coke fan too. I unfortunately have never, or should say fortunately, have never really gotten a hankering for soda. I do a little bit of the zero waters and flavored waters and everything else like that, but that's about it.
Hey, your volume really went down
Okay, let me see here.
as far as me being able to hear you.
Okay, yeah, all right, that could be, Kev, said my volume really went down.
Oh, it did. Let me fix it.
Because Kevin just walked back in the studio with a Gatorade and a Red Bull.
Is it because you weren't speaking on the microphone?
Oh, there you go.
I've got to think about this, John. It's like chewing gum, and let me lower the volume down and talk into the microphone. Kevin's had to remind me more than once that I need to be in my microphone with this technology that we're using, and I failed, Kevin. That was the first time. Yeah.
I was worried about anybody else still watching. I was like, I can barely hear him. I know he's talking.
Well, and that would have been our audience on the other end going, I can hear DPB, but he is fading away.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, because I know this is a lot of time to commit on a Sunday, but I do believe that there is nothing more important than what we're facing right now with the fatherless epidemic.
Yeah, I think Eric's movie's perfect timing too, and I think it's going to do well. It's already gotten an insane amount of views.
I'm going to reach out to him and probably use your name and see if I could get him to come on air to broadcast out to the Central Illinois market.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he'll come hang out with you. I think he's there. He's in the midst of it, man. They've done a great job in doing organization. He's got PR and he's got a bunch of the right things working for him that I think is going to help him get some really good exposure on this deal.
Well, there's another gentleman I've gotten to know up north that's building a $30 million facility on west side of Chicago for young men.
Oh, wow.
Women. Yeah. Pastor Corey Brooks. All right, we're going back live here. All right, welcome back here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I'm David Paul Blumenshine. This is the DPB show coming to you every week from 1 to 3 on Sundays. Once again, we couldn't do it without you. Joining me on the live stream and on air is John Finch, the author of one of the most amazing stories and books I've ever encountered. And that is the Father Effect book, and then made into a full-length movie. John, once again, thank you for spending your Sunday with us to talk about what I believe is the biggest issue facing humanity at this time, and that's the fatherless epidemic in our homes.
Absolutely, brother. Always love the conversation and just love being able to hang out with you and bounce some ideas off each other.
Well, I don't know about bouncing ideas. You're the bouncer. I've been following you, and I know you've been in this space, and you told me how critical last year it was that we advance. Because as Eric says in his documentary, and we played that on air, And I'm going to put that up in our chat and also on our Facebook page, his documentary. Besides how they can get in contact with the Father Effect is Satan has a plan, obviously, and he utilized an acronym in the military on what exactly Satan was doing. If he were in Satan's shoes, he'd do the same thing, and that is to attack the father in the nuclear family. Because if you can bring the father out of the home, then you can create statistics, as we shared. And I just find this fascinating for anybody just tuning in here or joining us on the live stream, that it says statistics are staggering in the skyrocketing percentage of minority family fatherless homes. When children don't have validation from a father, they will look for the validation elsewhere. Over 18.3 million children are living without a biological step or adoptive father in the home. 70% of the 18 million are in our Black community. Children who live in the fatherless homes are 279% more likely to deal drugs and illegally carry firearms. 1 out of every 3 pregnancies in fatherless homes ends in abortion. And finally, the one that just crushes me, 63% of youth suicide victims are from fatherless homes. I think it kind of sums it up, John. We've got a problem. In the immortal words of the movie Apollo 13, Houston, we have a problem. America, we have a problem.
Yeah, I think too that there's a piece in Eric's movie too that I like, and it's a short piece. I'm going to summarize it because I don't think I'll say exactly the way it is. But one of his guys says, when you have children, boys or girls, that feel unwanted or unloved, you've got them where you want them, as far as the enemy's concerned, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to cause this generational curse, right, to go on for generations, because it starts with the young people feeling unloved and unwanted, and that just carries over in the way they behave, who they choose as a spouse or whatever, and it just becomes this destructive pattern of this orphan mentality, instead of knowing that you are a beloved child of God, that he believes in you, is proud of you, and loves you more than you can ever imagine, right? That's what every child should know and believe, but so many of us don't or didn't growing up, and it's the repercussions of that, that's what we're suffering now.
And for some of our listening audience, I want to get this statistic in there too, because I almost failed to do that, because it's one that impacts me. On my days gone by, I worked in the prison ministry, and I know you're steeped in prison ministry and working with the incarcerated. Is it true 5% of those in the departments of corrections across the land came from fatherless homes?
Yeah, it's incredible, the experience of going into prisons. And I had a prison chaplain tell me one time, he said, John, in your movie, you say 9 out of 10 people have a father wound. And that was a study that was done, I think, back in 2007. And John Eldridge, who we interviewed for the movie, he'll argue that it's 10 out of 10 because none of us get through this world without a wound, because we're all imperfect fathers. We're going to wound our kids. I've wounded mine, et cetera, et cetera. But he says, in your film, you say 9 out of 10. He goes, in here, it's 12 out of 10. Yeah. Every woman and man in prison is there because of something that's happened. And they've committed a crime, if you will, because of this crying out, this lashing out of anger and all these different things, and then the way it can play out. Most of it coming back down to a father who has abandoned them or abused them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that, once again, that's work that needs to be done, especially in our departments of corrections. When we talk about systemic issues facing our land, we hear that word systemic thrown out a lot lately on this issue and that issue, but we never hear about the systemic issue of fatherless homes and how the ramifications and the impact, Department of Corrections, you name it, it impacts everything. Well, here we come. It's just too short, John. We're up against the end of the show. Tell our audience how they can get in contact with you.
We're at The Father Effect all over social media, whether it be Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And of course, we have our website at thefathereffect.com.
Well, John, I'm going to be reaching out because I want to proposition you to come here to Illinois because I want other people to experience you live. So plan on that because, once again, God is moving here in Central Illinois. Hey, appreciate you, my brother. You're an inspiration. You're definitely one of my 7. I'm sorry it's taken a year to get back with you, but look forward to hearing from you in the not too distant future.
Absolutely, brother. Greatly appreciate you. Keep up the good work.
You're a good man. I appreciate it. Hey, we're going to be back next Sunday from 1 to 3 here at Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal.